The Windsor Castle. No show. William's absence speaks volumes. Here's what the palace won't say out loud. William and Kate, living mere minutes from Windsor Castle, made a calculated decision to skip King Charles's premiere, a deeply personal documentary about the environmental legacy he spent decades building. This wasn't a scheduling mishap or a last-minute conflict. This was a statement wrapped in silence, a power play disguised as absence. The heir and his wife had every opportunity to show up, to stand beside the king, to present a unified front around Charles's defining moment. Instead, they chose absence, and in royal language that choice means everything. Empty chairs don't lie. They don't get spun by palace PR teams. They don't offer themselves up for sympathetic reinterpretation. William and Kate were simply not there, and that fact sits heavier than any excuse the institution could manufacture. The documentary represented Charles's frame for his entire reign, his vision, his values, his legacy, and William's refusal to attend reads as a refusal to endorse it, a refusal to stand in his father's shadow, a refusal to play the supporting role that an heir is supposed to play. This wasn't about environmental philosophy or competing visions of the future. This was about control, about who gets to define the narrative, about a son unwilling to bolster his father's moment when doing so might require humility he simply doesn't possess. And that choice, that singular moment of absence, reveals far more about the state of this family than any statement ever could. The no-show that said everything. William and Kate's absence from King Charles's personal documentary premiere at Windsor Castle wasn't a scheduling conflict. It was a deliberate statement written in empty chairs. The event, billed by Buckingham Palace as deeply significant to Charles's reign and legacy, took place mere miles from where they live, making the no-show impossible to dismiss as logistical. In royal language, absence speaks louder than any excuse ever could. When the heir and his wife choose not to appear at their father's defining moment, a project Charles has spent decades building toward, a documentary meant to cement how he wants his reign understood, that choice reverberates through the institution like a door slamming shut. There's no scheduling conflict that explains this away, no sudden obligation that emerged. This was calculated. This was a refusal. And in a world where every appearance is choreographed and every gesture carries weight, the decision to simply not show up becomes the most powerful message of all. A rejection dressed up as absence, a power play disguised as a calendar conflict. The palace will scramble to explain it, will float tired excuses about not wanting to overshadow the king, but everyone inside those walls knows the truth. Absence, in royal terms, is never accidental. The laziest excuse in the royal playbook. Watch how the palace spin machine works next. You already know the excuse that will be floated. That line is tired, insulting, and frankly laughable. If William and Kate wanted to show unity without stealing attention, the optics write themselves. Father and son standing shoulder to shoulder, environmental continuity flowing from one generation to the next, legacy passing seamlessly to heir. Charles the visionary, William the executor. That's monarchy PR 101. The kind of image the institution dreams about at night. Instead, they opted out, because showing up would have required effort, humility, and actual support of someone else's moment. And that has never been William's strong suit. Their absence reveals something far more telling than any excuse the palace could craft. In a family business built on duty and continuity, that's not just a no-show, it's a statement. This was about power, not the planet. Let's be very clear. This isn't about environmental differences. Earthshot versus Charles's philosophy. VC energy versus spiritual gardening. That's window dressing. This is about Charles used this documentary to frame his reign. Not Camilla, not William. And William has spent years being briefed as king-in-waiting, moderniser, next chapter. Charles improving health and asserting relevance throws cold water on that entire narrative. William skipping the premiere reads as a refusal to endorse his father's story, and more importantly, a refusal to stand in. Because here's what the palace doesn't want you to understand. This was never about saving the planet. It was about saving face. It was about Charles reclaiming the spotlight after months of health concerns, after being sidelined, after watching his sons, one in exile, one politically distant, reshape what the monarchy means to a new generation. The documentary was his weapon, and William's absence, that was his counter-move. He didn't need to say a word. He just needed to not be there. Why Harry is always dragged into it. Now, here's where the press does its usual cowardly pivot. According to palace whisperers and their pet journalists, the deepest fault line between Charles and William is Harry. That William can't stand the idea of reconciliation. That he throws tantrums at the thought of Charles speaking to his younger son. Whether or not you buy that version, notice what always happens. Even when he's not in the room, not at the event, not even physically present in the country. The institution needs him to be the villain. It's easier than examining the actual dysfunction festering at the core. Harry exists in this narrative as a blamed for fractures he didn't cause, blamed for emotional immaturity that predates his marriage, blamed for exposing truths the institution would rather bury. He's the convenient explanation for why the heir won't support his father, why the family won't sit at the same table, why internal relationships have rotted from the inside out. And the palace wheels keep turning, pointing fingers at the one person who had the courage to leave rather than examining why someone. Today they don't want you to see. Here's the part that makes this whole thing absurd. Harry is the one who actually shows up, not to premieres orchestrated for maximum visibility, not to events designed to pad a carefully curated public image, but to places where the work actually. He commits to causes without cameras glued to his face, without needing the world to validate every move through Instagram aesthetics. Harry is the one invited to global summits, the UN, privacy conferences, mental health forums, because people outside the royal bubble, people who don't care about palace politics or tabloid narratives, they invite him because he delivers substance. Meanwhile, William can barely muster genuine interest for his own engagements, and Kate's biggest headlines come from braids, jeans, wardrobe tweaks, and carefully choreographed walkabouts. Their fans talk about aesthetics because there's nothing substantive underneath to discuss. No real advocacy, no meaningful commitment, just the performance of duty without the actual doing. The irony is brutal, the kind that keeps palace spin doctors awake at night. The brother accused of abandoning duty, the one they've spent years painting as irresponsible and selfish, is doing more meaningful work on the global stage than the heir who stayed behind, who played by the rules, who was supposed to inherit not just a crown, but a legacy of genuine purpose. And nobody in the institution wants to acknowledge it. Why this matters for Harry and Meghan. The fractures in this family didn't appear the moment Oprah sat down across from Meghan, or when Harry's memoir hit shelves, or when Netflix cameras started rolling. Those fractures were already spiderwebbing through the institution. Invisible to outsiders, but very real to those living inside it. William skipping his father's defining moment isn't some isolated incident born from recent tension. It's a symptom of dysfunction that runs far deeper, far older, and has nothing to do with Harry's honesty about it. Harry wasn't the architect of this collapse. He was simply the one with enough integrity to refuse rotting inside it. He saw the machinery that rewards silence, that punishes truth-telling, that protects the powerful at the expense of everyone else, and he walked away. Meghan didn't pull him from some functional paradise into exile. She helped him survive an environment designed to break people who dare speak about what they've experienced. She stood beside him while the institution that claims to value family loyalty turned on them both for the unforgivable sin of refusing to pretend everything was fine. The real story isn't that Harry and Meghan damaged the monarchy. It's that they simply refuse to be damaged by it any longer. The double standard is the story. Ask yourself this. If Harry had skipped a major royal event tied to his father's legacy, how would the press have reacted? He'd be called cruel, ungrateful, disloyal, a traitor to the crown. The headlines would be relentless. Think pieces about abandonment, op-eds about duty, royal correspondents shaking their heads on every news cycle. But when William does it, endless sympathetic framing, soft speculation about his reasons, thoughtful analysis about protecting the king's moment, and somehow it still loops back to blaming Harry anyway. He's the absent one, pulling strings from California, the villain in a story he's not even part of. This is exactly the double standard Harry and Meghan tried to expose, the reason they've been vilified for simply naming it out loud. The institution protects its favourites while weaponizing scrutiny against those who dare to leave. And that's precisely why the media hates them for it.